Counterterrorism Today. Up-to-date analysis with Dan Diker.
Combating cyber terrorism, the view from Israel. I'm Dan Diker. This is Counterterrorism Today. Good to have you with us. We have one heck of a show today and one very critical problem to discuss. We're talking about cyber terrorism and cyber warfare, two emerging threats that really fall alongside conventional and non-conventional terrorism, maybe even more dangerous. Possibility of shutting down critical infrastructures, water, gas, oil, you name it. You can shut down states, cities, countries at the flip of a switch. The question is, how do we define the problem and how do we confront the threats facing us? Well, we have three of the leading experts in Israel on the issue of cyber, in the broadest sense of the word. Welcome, gentlemen, Colonel Reserve Rami Efrati, who is a senior member of the cyber community, Colonel Reserve IDF. He's the former head of the civilian division of the Israel National Cyber Bureau in the Prime Minister's office, and today he's the founder and CEO of Firmitas, which is a company focusing on providing a holistic technological approach for the security of mission-critical infrastructure sector and the Internet of Things. It should be mentioned that Colonel Efrati served in the IDF for nearly 30 years, commanded a number of important operational and technological positions in Amman, which is Israeli military intelligence, and he actually received, and this is noteworthy, the Creative Thinking Award from the Director of Military Intelligence. Anybody knowing anything about the Israeli Army, if you receive this award, you're really an out-of-the-box thinker. So we're pleased to have you, Colonel Efrati, and also in the studio today, two very important experts in the issue of cyber terrorism, cyber warfare, and other things related to cyber with regard to threats. Oren Elimelech, cybersecurity expert, information security manager in the Ministry of Transportation and Road Safety in Israel, and he'll tell us among other things as well, but this is critical. This is a critical infrastructure issue that we have to talk about with regard to the possibility of cyber terrorists shutting down those critical infrastructures in Israel and other countries in the West and around the world. And finally, of course, Dr. Harel Menashri, welcome to the program, Dr. Menashri, a research fellow at the ICT, the International Center for Counterterrorism, here at the IDC Herzliya, and as well he's a cyber information security and technological intelligence expert in Israel, and he well known for his position at the Holon Institute of Technology as a lecturer on cyber and cyber threats, and at Bar Ilan University in the information science department. So, gentlemen, welcome to Counterterrorism Today. Let's get right into it. Colonel Efrati, are we facing a phenomenon called cyber terrorism? Can we use that term to define the threat that we do face globally in digital terror?
I believe that first of all we have to identify what is terror, and then we'll be able to come out about cyber terrorism. And terror is identified as a violent or destructive act committed by groups in order to intimidate population or government or government activities. And I believe that whenever we are speaking about cyber, we immediately speaking also about cyber terror. Why? Because cyber terror is a way also to intimidate the population or the government or any political group in order to do things that they were not aimed to do before. So I believe that we are already in the cyber terrorism era. And I think that we have so many examples that I'm sure that we are going to speak about it today, about what really happened and what is going to happen as well.
Dr. Menashri, what's the major danger of cyber terrorism? Many people talk in terms of hackers, of hacker activism, not taking what Colonel Efrati said so seriously, because we don't see the immediate loss, destruction of human life as we do when we watch a suicide bomber blow himself up or herself up, or shooting all kinds of other what they call acts of political violence and terror that you can actually see the blood, excuse the expression, on the screen.
This is the major problem with cyber terror, because we don't see as much attacks from cyber groups as we see in the terror, the conventional terror. And the terror attacks or terror acts that we see, most of it is about propaganda or recreatism or things like that. Yet we don't see a act against infrastructures, and it surprised me because we are waiting something like 20 years for that, and we know that they know, some groups, some terror groups know how to deal with it, and yet we didn't see actions against infrastructures, and that's what we are waiting for.
So wait, Oren Elimelech, why you are the director of cyber for the Ministry of Transport? Why haven't we seen a major attack, digital attack, cyber attack against major Israeli infrastructure? Or perhaps we haven't, we just don't know about it because it was prevented.
Also, I'd like to mention that I'm a fellow researcher here in the
ICT.
Yeah, as well. I do think that we are only in the beginning of an era, as my colleague said. There are really minimal attacks. Most of them are not published, okay? Mostly focus on data leakage, okay? Stealing data that they can use for their own good. But critical infrastructure being damaged, hurt, in order to initiate a large-scale attack and causing havoc was yet to be seen. We know that is something that could happen. Okay, it happened in other areas around the world, but in Israel it has not yet. Okay, or it has happened, but really minimal scale because most of it was prevented by either forces here in Israel that are acting upon this, if it's military or government. And I think that complementing what my colleague Efrati said, that cyber terror is now the point, because cyber terror is actually harvesting and using cyber to leverage terrorism. Okay, they want to use it as a tool in order to amplify the terror attack. Okay, so there has been, but it's not widely reporting. It's not been as a scale that we are afraid to see.
So, Colonel Efrati, when we talk about using cyber as a platform to amplify the magnitude of conventional terror, when you spoke just a minute ago, I think we were talking about cyber terror as well in a different light. In other words, the possibility of destroying human life by destroying infrastructures and systems in any given state as a complement with an E, not an I, to conventional and biological and chemical terrorism. In other words, the question is, can we actually see, as you've given us the definition of terrorism, cyber terrorism as a form of violence that can cost millions of lives?
I believe that the answer is yes, and things have been changed. We're speaking about political extortion. The Sony case, what are we talking about? It's like cyber terror. We are speaking about affecting the election. It is a kind of a way to affect the government. So we are going to see, when we are speaking about cyber terror, I'm not speaking only about making a big damage of electric plantation. I'm not speaking only about hospitals. I'm thinking about the regular day. And things were changed. It was changed because when we are looking at North Korea's launching a ballistic missile, look about the cyber. You don't need to launch a missile. You can do it all over, only by the internet. And the effect is going to be the same as a kinetic effect. The question, as Oren said, did it really happen? Maybe we don't know. Maybe it is still waiting. Maybe somebody just sent all the relevant viruses that will wait till somebody will give the order. Speaking about WannaCry that we just faced all over the world during the last 1 month, how did it happen? How was it so well synchronized? How was it done, and what was the effect? So I believe that we are in a time of cyber terror. We just have to identify again what do we mean when we speak cyber terror?
Dr. Menashri, cyber terrorism with sub-state groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas, how, this is an open question for all of you because it's a big question. When we look at cyber terrorists, people think perhaps immediately of state terror actors like Iran. And there are some that say that Iran has already tried to attack Israel through other sub-state groups.
You can, for example, see what happened in Tzuk Eitan.
You're talking about the military campaign against Hamas in 2014.
Yes.
Protective Edge.
As published,
Protective Edge, right?
as
we know in English.
already published, the Iranian regime tried to shut down the internet in Israel.
Yeah.
They have a full operation that meant to shut down the internet in Israel. So the borders between states and terror groups like Hezbollah are very, very how do you say it? Transparent. It's not visible. So sometimes a terror group like Hezbollah that there is a argument if Hezbollah is terror group or military, but Hezbollah have abilities of state, and Hezbollah do and know how to do a lot of things. And as Oren mentioned before, there is question if we know about the attacks, or sometimes it doesn't publish. So there is a problem, and there is a question and argument between the cyber defense and the intelligence people. The intelligence want to play with the attacker and to fool him, and they want sometimes that the attack tools stay in your system when you find it. And of course, the cyber defense people want to remove it immediately from the infrastructure. So sometimes it doesn't publish, and we don't know. But we can know that even when United States soldiers get inside Afghanistan, they found 2 computers with evidence that Bin Laden people try to understand what is SCADA and how to fall down Hoover Dam. So if we know that, and we know that ISIS have infrastructures in Syria and Iraq for gasoline and oil, and they know what is infrastructure and how to deal with it, the big question is how we can't see them try to attack such infrastructures, and they know what happened in December 15 in Ukraine by the Russians when they shut down some electric grids. So it published, and when it published, we know that there are many copycats, and when you find tool, you know that this tool will copy by other groups, and you can find your tool come to you as a boomerang sometimes. So I don't know why we didn't see so far terror attacks against such things like infrastructures. But if the terror want to terrify and to make us afraid, that's the ultimate thing.
What do you think? I'd like to keep this question on the table. Colonel Efrati, what's your sense of it? Non-state actors that are increasingly today, funny enough, when we talk about ICT and terrorism, they're holding territory. Hamas holds territory, operates more like an army. Hezbollah, as you said, Dr. Menashri, operates like also like a conventional military. Even ISIS, which is this classical sort of dispersed Al-Qaeda type of network, they control actual swaths of territory in 2 states. So they have. It seems that they have the infrastructure, and they have the state infrastructure to really cause damage. What do you think, Colonel Efrati? We'll get to Oren in just a moment, sitting patiently.
I think that many things have been changed. First of all, non-state organization, they don't have to be so sophisticated as the United States of America. The people of Israel, Russia, Korea, Iran, and others. Now, first of all, you can go to the darknet and get the same, most sophisticated cyber weapon system by just paying money. Second, if you don't find it in the darknet, you can find it all over the internet, because there are organizations like shadow brokers who suddenly comes in the morning and let you know, here, this is the most advanced exploit weapon system by the NSA. You have it on the internet. And if you have it in the internet, you can use it. But the main issue that became one of the leading factors is what I call the attribution problem. When you attack Israel by the Hezbollah and you launch a missile to Israel, it takes you several minutes or milliseconds to identify who shot the missile, where did it come from, and you know how to act. When it comes with the cyber, usually you don't have, nobody's coming with a transparent saying, I'm the one who did it.
Anonymous.
And therefore, also another issue is coming. There was an excellent article wrote by Uri Tor. He's a guy who was here in ICT, who wrote an excellent work about deterrence. There is no deterrence. I mean, if there is an attribution and you don't know who is the guy, or the guy doesn't tell you, I'm the organization, ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas, whatever, you're not going to attack him. And so they feel much more secured when it comes to cyber. And the last, if there is an attribution and there is no deterrence, you can also have an attack as what we call attack as a service. You don't have to do it yourself. You go to the darknet, you pay some money, and somebody else is doing it for you. And I believe that changed the rules of the games, because suddenly people are, non-state organizations are able to use the most sophisticated weapon against anybody they would like to, and it's so easy to get it. You don't have to build a new atomic bomb or come with a biological weapon. You have it with you, and the effect is exactly as a kinetic one.
And Oren, no serious logistical problems, as Colonel Efrati is suggesting there is in conventional terror. Not big planning times, logistical bases, very simple to pull off.
To pull off an attack, a cyber attack, today is much more easier than to do a conventional attack. Okay, Efrati mentioned shadow brokers. Today was released by shadow brokers a monthly subscription. $21,000. You get up-to-date tools. Okay, so this is a really, really low amount of money to pay to get really advanced tools, state level. So non-state and terror organization and proxies can use really advanced tools, and other factions such as Hezbollah can use such tools that are really high level, that were planned and devised by really state level actors, and this enables them to have a really high-scale attack capabilities. And I would also mention that in the matter of attribution, which is really, really important, that sometimes you actually you frame another guy. Okay, that has been more than once. It was published. If you take, for example, Germany, if you take France, for example, latest incidents. Do you know who it was? Was it Russia? Was it Germany? Was it France? You don't know who it was. Okay. Even in the matter of the DMC, the Republic elections. Okay. There were traces originating to other areas in Europe, not exactly to Russia. Okay. And all this is really a problem, because you cannot point your fingers who's the fault. Okay. Who acted upon that? And I would say that if you look at it in a broad way, if you go back to the beginning of your question, disruptive, what Efrati mentioned, the definition of terror. If you manage to cause an effect in our day-to-day activities, okay, then you have an influence. You have an influence on the country, on the civilian, and that is an effect, direct effect also on the government. So you have leverage on them, and disrupting transportation, day-to-day activities, banking. If you mention WannaCry had a huge effect on the hospital in the UK. So all this is by I think most people's definition is an act of cyber terrorism. I believe that we're only starting to see the springs here, and will definitely grow.
You know, Oren, what you're mentioning is such a critical topic that we haven't touched yet. We're going to, in a couple of minutes, we're going to call Dr. Tal Pavel, who is an expert in what is known in the business, as you all know, social engineering. This notion of creating avatars and false identities and creating fear in the minds of the public through massive confusion. There are some that say that I was going to say the Soviet Union, that Russia has engaged in that type of cyber behavior with regard to the United States in the recent elections. We don't know. But there is the larger issue that you're raising a political warfare through cyber as a form of terrorism, mass confusion. I want to go back to one thing you said though, and put this on the table for the three of you gentlemen. That it seems one of the scariest aspects of cyber is that viruses can be planted a year before and only break out at a given time, whereas in conventional terror, you know, what you see is what you get. Yes. What is the implication of that threat?
It's a huge implication because an adversary can have what you call a red button. It can have inside your system a button, theoretically a red button, that he can press on D-Day, that he can use to cause you problems, put you down, causing you not to be able to react when you're needed, okay? And that can be from damaging the system, taking it down, data leakage, control remote, anything possible. But that is a huge implication. And today, this is a really big concern because everything, if you go back, it's a global world. And not everything is manufactured in one place by one company. So it's a huge digital supply chain, okay? And I'm not talking just about hardware, okay? A computer, what we're having here in the studio, for example. But that can also be, for example, software inside your systems that you are developing, okay? So it's pretty much a D-Day nightmare that can happen.
D-Day nightmare. Do you think so, Colonel Efrati? Do you see it as a D-Day nightmare?
I believe so.
We're just making a call. Don't bother us. We're ordering pizza. It's okay. We're ordering pizza.
We're speaking also about deception. I just want to add about what Oren just said. If you sometime find in the code a kind of Chinese characters or Cyrillic, it doesn't mean that it came from China or North Korea or Russia. It means that maybe somebody is using you as a tool to identify as if somebody else did it for you. All the rest is a big change that will bring us to the question, I believe that we are going to speak about it, about intelligence in cyber.
So let's talk about intelligence in cyber. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said 4 months ago at the Cyber Aviv, or the Tech Aviv, I'm sure all three of you were there, or prominently, or know about it at least. He said Israel is in the top 5. I don't know where he came up with the ranking, but Israel's in the top 5 of cyber powers in terms of counter-cyber warfare, counter-cyber terrorism. Dr. Menashri, how well is Israel doing, in your view, in order to, in terms of awareness of the range of threats and operationally to set up counterterrorism infrastructures in cyber?
First, we have to know that there is no such a thing as 100% of defense. We have to put it in our mind and know it. Israel is one of the first countries that made a defense to the infrastructures in the country. And we deal with it many years ago. And because the system here in Israel, because we can have regulators that make a command or write a command, and everyone have to do or have to follow this command. It's not everything private yet in Israel, so we can protect ourselves. Second, we have a lot of collaboration, lot of cooperation with other states, and you have to understand you can't deal alone against your all enemies, because you have to be somewhere between you and your enemy. If the enemy is, for example, or not, enemy is not good, not good word, but your
Yariv, do you want to say your adversary? Your adversary.
Your adversary, yes. If your adversary is Russia, for example, and you need to be somewhere in the line between you and Russia, you don't have places there. You are here in the Middle East. You need some help from other countries, such as I don't know, Scandinavian or England or something, or United States, and the main problem that takes the whole issue under it is that there is no rule for cyber in the world, and there will no. I don't see how can we have a rule, because there are two way of thinking between Russia and China and United States and other countries.
It's also culture, the issue of culture, right?
It's not only culture, because the democratic way say that there is no governance of the internet and the cyber world. Companies like Google and Microsoft take the rules and they will set the protocols and so on. China and Russia say we have to defend our regime, and because of that, not American company will set the rules and the protocols. We as a state will set the protocols and will say who will come inside or who will go outside.
You mentioned, Dr. Menashri, just apropos your comment now, that today China passed a cyber regulation that has been very controversial on the international scene.
They have for a long time some rules and some laws that make every company that manufacture in China have to let the regime people go inside to the factory, go to the line, and do whatever they want. And if you see, for example, a company like Apple, if you remember the San Bernardino case, when the FBI asked Apple to open the iPhone of the terrorists, and the Apple said no, because we are
privacy issues.
Privacy, and so Apple and the FBI are hypocrites, both of them, because Apple know that because they have to manufacture in China, in Foxconn, they let the Chinese regime the source code, and they let them get inside to the line, and maybe in the Apple you have backdoors that the Chinese regime put inside, because they have to do it, otherwise they can't manufacture in China. The law that came up today make it clearly and make it more rude, because it said that every company that have database about Chinese people need to put this database in Chinese computers and not somewhere in the cloud or other countries. So it's much more rude for the companies, and I don't know what will happen, but they need to manufacture in China because it's cheaper.
I want to move from China to Israel for a second. Colonel Efrati, you in 2012 were there from the first moment in terms of the Prime Minister's decision to establish a cyber directorate, if you will, both let's call it civilian and non-civilian, in the Prime Minister's office. How impressed are you with the Prime Minister's awareness of cyber, the importance of cyber? It seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is ahead of the curve in terms of other Prime Ministers in other Western states.
First of all, I totally agree with you. But let me start with the beginning. The beginning was exactly 2003. Dr. Menashri just mentioned it. In 2003, the government of the State of Israel decided to establish a new organization under the Israeli Shin Bet, the Israeli Security Agency, called NISA, National Information Security Authority. But since 2003 till 2012, the country was much more developed, and therefore the the government of the State of Israel, headed by Prime Minister Netanyahu, decided to take it very seriously. And when you want to take something very seriously, you are not only arranging a new organization, but you give the organization a lot of money to do it. I think the decision taken by Prime Minister Netanyahu was to invest a lot of money in securing or from cyber attacks the government, the industry. The decision was also, and it was headed by the Israel National Cyber Bureau, to start a lot of education, research, and one of the most important things that I was one of the people dealing with it was how do we make sure that we can take the concept of a startup nation into a cyber nation by supporting the Israeli industry and make it a leading industry in cybersecurity. And it was done only because it was headed by Prime Minister Netanyahu, by the Ministry of Economy, together with the National Cyber Bureau, together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, together with all other industries, and the Office of the Chief Scientist at that time, in order to support young people and startups in order to come out with what is going to be a growing engine of the Israeli economy. And I think we see the results these days.
Oren Elimelech, what lessons learned can we, as the this radio program in cooperation with the International Institute for Counterterrorism, help other governments and other research institutes and other intelligence agencies to learn? Because you are on the ground what we say in Hebrew, in the maarechet, in the middle of the system. What lessons learned can you share with us about cyber terrorism and defeating it or guarding against it?
I think that continuing what my established colleague here said, especially Efrati, is the INCB, the Israeli National Cyber Bureau, has definitely is a step in the right direction. This is something that if you look at the cyber terror and landscape, the government, the Israeli government, realized that it's her duty to protect the civilians, not only the military, not only the government facilities. This is something that has been on the agenda. This is why it was one of the founding steps for the INCB. All right. So the INCB is doing really crucial steps here, continuing what was developed in the last 10 years under the Sheet Bet. Okay. It's continuing the steps to protect critical infrastructures. What we do here in the ICT in Israel, helping fellow researchers, is making sure they're aware of the progress of research, of steps that are happening in Israel and around the globe that we can bring into notion, what we investigate in order to have better practices, guidelines, recommendations, just by making sure that everybody is synced and aligned to things that are common. These is common problems that can be shared not only in Israel, but globally around the world. It's a global world. Cyber terror will not stop at the border of a country. It has no boundaries, okay? So this is something that the recommendation that here in the ICT and also by the NCB and also from NISA are something that we can definitely progress to the world. And my fellow colleague researcher here, we try to bring out to light all these researches and development in Israel and around the globe, internal and external.
ICT is not a regular academia. You have to understand it. I think what is being done under the leading of
Professor Boaz Ganor
and Eitan Azani on all these things is, first of all, I'm taking a part in many groups that are looking, okay, don't take it only theoretically, make it real thing.
Practical.
And we have several meetings of excellent experts, which comes out with a result or with a
working paper.
A working paper that goes to the government as well. ICT decided also that in their annual, annual meetings, we're speaking about cyber, not only about kinetic terror. So it became awareness. And awareness is the most important word when you speak about cyber. And in many countries that I'm going very often, when I'm speaking with them about the war, they say, Rami, it will not happen to us. It happened already, but I don't even understand it. In Israel, we have a yearly or an annual country exercise. We didn't invent it. Anonymous invented it.
Yeah.
We are lucky. Every April 7 from 2012, we have such an exercise. We don't know the scenario, we don't know anything, but we are preparing. And then you see the most important thing, the private-public partnership, together with all the organization, plus the people who are dealing with data security. And they have done, all the guys dealing with cybersecurity for their clients are sitting together, coming out with their decisions, and they support their companies. So I believe such an exercise, let's call it an exercise, is something amazing, but the most important thing is the collaboration. Public-private partnership and worldwide coordination.
You said the key word, and we're getting the word from our executive producer that we're going to have to continue this in another session. This has been a fascinating discussion. I think one thing that we can all agree about is that Israel is an agenda setter on the global scene for fighting cyber terrorism, private and public partnership, and on a government level. Gentlemen, it's really been an honor and pleasure to have you all. We will have to continue this. It's too important to leave for a 35-minute initial analysis, but for now, this has been Counterterrorism Today. Oren Elimelech, Colonel Rami Efrati, and Dr. Harel Menashri, thank you ever so much for sharing your experience and wisdom with us on Counterterrorism Today, cooperation with the ICT and IDC International Radio.
Counterterrorism Today, a collaboration with ICT